I was 67 years old the morning I learned my wife was a liar. 6 a.m., January cold. The barn door scraped open against frozen ground, metal hinges shrieking. My breath came out white. The farmall's diesel engine coughed 3 times before it caught that old 1952 tractor belching black smoke into the gray dawn. I could smell it, exhaust mixing with hay dust and the bitter edge of winter air. Inside the cab, I pulled off my work gloves long enough to pour coffee from the thermos. Steam rose past my face. The leather seat cracked under my weight, same spot it had cracked for my grandfather. That's when I saw it again, the welded plate he'd hammered into the dashboard 70 years ago. Letters stamped deep into the metal. Hutchins land feeds Hutchins blood. No sale, no surrender. I touched it with one finger, cold as a knife blade. Linda had asked me 3 times in the past month if I'd consider selling this tractor to a collector. Said we could get good money. I'd said no each time, but she kept asking. Now I wondered why. By 7:30, I was at Miller's Junction Diner, sliding into the corner booth. The vinyl seat stuck to my Carhartt jacket, and the table had that tackiness from years of syrup spills no amount of wiping could fix. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The whole place smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. The good kind. The kind that's been sitting on the burner since 5 a.m. Betty came over with the pot. Didn't ask, just poured. She'd been pouring my coffee for 30 years. Usual, Hutch? Yes, ma'am. She walked off and I wrapped both hands around the mug, letting the heat work into my knuckles. Outside the window, the January sky hung low and colorless. Road salt crunched under truck tires in the parking lot. That's when I heard them. 2 young guys at the counter, Jason Riley and Tyler something, both worked seasonal for the Hendersons. Couldn't have been older than 25. Jason's voice carried across the diner like he wanted it to. I'm just saying, Hutch's wife sure recovered fast from that flu. He laughed. Saw her truck at Brennan's site survey yesterday. Didn't look sick to me. Tyler snorted. Maybe she was checking out the new development. You know, planning ahead. More laughter. The diner got quiet, the way small places do when everyone's pretending not to listen. Forks stopped scraping plates. Even the coffee pot stopped hissing. My hand shook. Just a tremor, but enough that coffee sloshed against the rim of the mug. I set it down carefully, stared at my eggs, scrambled, going cold, grease congealing at the edges. Betty materialized beside me, face tight. Don't pay them any mind. But I was already standing. Left a $5 bill on the table, more than enough for eggs I hadn't touched, and walked out. Heard the bell over the door ring behind me. Heard Jason say something else I didn't catch, followed by laughter. In the truck, I sat with the engine running. My wedding ring caught the weak morning light. 37 years I'd worn it, 7 married to Linda. The thing was, Linda had said she was sick, said she needed the weekend to rest, didn't want me fussing over her. That was 3 days ago. I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? I drove home the long way, past the North 40, where the ground lay frozen and stubbled with last year's corn stalks. The whole way, Jason's words rattled around in my head. Brennan's site survey, Kyle Brennan. 34 years old, real estate developer, drove a silver F-150 that cost more than most people's houses. He'd been sniffing around the county for 2 years, buying up farmland, talking about mixed-use development and luxury rural estates. I'd told him no twice when he'd approached me about selling. Told him this land had been Hutchins' land since 1889 and would stay that way till I was cold in the ground. Linda had been there the second time. Afterwards, she'd said I was being stubborn. Said we should at least hear him out. I pulled into the drive, parked by the barn. Sat there with my hands on the wheel. When I finally went inside, Linda was in the kitchen, hair still wet from the shower. She smelled different. Not her usual lavender soap. Something sharper, woodsy, cedarwood maybe. Morning, she said, not looking up from her phone. Feeling better? You tell me. I poured myself more coffee from the pot she'd made. You're the one who was sick. Much better. Just needed rest. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm thinking about running into town later. Need anything? No. She went back to her phone. I watched her thumb move across the screen, scrolling. Deleted something, her nails were painted. When had she painted her nails? She never bothered with that. I've got paperwork at Michael's office this afternoon, I said. Estate stuff. Want to come? Can't. She paused. I've got that thing. What thing? The church thing, fundraiser planning. Right? She left 20 minutes later. I watched from the window as her truck kicked up gravel, heading toward town. Or maybe not toward town. Maybe toward wherever Kyle Brennan was doing his site surveys. I stood there long after the dust settled. Then I walked out to the barn. The farmall sat where I'd left it, engine ticking as it cooled. I climbed into the cab, ran my hand over the welded plate again. The metal had warmed some from the engine heat, but the words were still cold under my fingertips. No sale, no surrender. My grandfather had homesteaded this land in 1889. Cleared it with a mule and a plow. Built the first barn with lumber he'd milled himself. My father had farmed it through the Depression, through droughts, through years when the bank came calling and he'd sent them away empty-handed. Now it was mine. 450 acres of black Iowa soil that grew corn and soybeans and had fed 3 generations of Hutchins blood. Linda knew that. She'd known it when she married me. So why was she suddenly so interested in selling? The next morning I went back to Miller's Junction. Not because I wanted to, but because hiding felt like surrender. The breakfast crowd was thinner. Tuesday, most folks already at work. I took the same booth. Betty brought coffee without a word, just squeezed my shoulder as she poured. I was halfway through my eggs when Betty came back, slid into the seat across from me. That had never happened before. Hutch, she kept her voice low. I don't gossip. You know that. I know. But those boys yesterday, they weren't making it up. She looked toward the kitchen, then back at me. My niece works at the Benton Inn, 200 miles east, fancy place. She saw Linda there. February 10th through 12th, with a man. The eggs turned to paste in my mouth. I swallowed hard. You sure? She's sure. Said she didn't want to tell me, but after yesterday, Betty's eyes were wet. I'm sorry. I finished my coffee, left another $5. Walked out into air so cold it burned my lungs. February 10th through 12th. That was the weekend Linda said she'd gone to her sister's cabin to recover. Said she needed quiet, needed to sleep it off. I'd offered to come check on her. She'd said, no, don't bother. Margie will take care of me. I'd believed her. I drove home on autopilot, pulled into the drive, sat in the truck until my hands stopped shaking. That night, I waited until Linda was asleep. The house settled around us with its familiar sounds. Furnace kicking on, floorboards creaking, wind rattling the storm windows. She lay on her side, breathing deep and even. I got up slow, walked to the closet where she'd hung her winter coat. The good one, navy blue, the one she wore to town. I went through the pockets, receipts, grocery store, gas station, pharmacy, normal things. Then, folded small in the inside pocket, Benton Inn, room 247, 2 nights, $416, dated February 10 to 12. I stood there holding it, this little slip of paper that changed everything. The furnace kicked off and the silence was absolute. Just my breathing and the paper crinkling between my fingers. I put it back exactly where I'd found it. In the kitchen, I opened my laptop, searched for the Benton Inn. It loaded slow. Our internet out here was barely functional, but eventually the website came up. Luxury resort, spa services, couples packages, 200 miles east, like Betty said, nowhere near her sister's cabin. The sister who lived 40 miles west. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark kitchen until dawn, started graying the windows. When Linda came down at 7, showered and dressed, she smiled at me. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. She poured coffee, added cream the way she liked it. The smell filled the kitchen, bitter and burnt. I was thinking, she said, maybe we should talk to Kyle Brennan again, about his offer. I told him no. I know, but... She sat across from me. We're not getting younger, Warren. This place is a lot of work. Maybe it's time to think about what comes next. What comes next is I keep farming. For how long? Her voice had an edge now. You're 67. What if something happens? What if you can't manage it anymore? Then Clara gets it. Linda's jaw tightened. Clara was my daughter from my first marriage. Linda had never liked her much, though she pretended otherwise. Clara lives in Denver, Linda said. She hasn't set foot on this farm in 3 years. Doesn't matter. It's hers when I'm gone. We should at least talk about options. No. She stared at me for a long moment, then stood, poured her coffee down the sink. Fine, I've got errands. She left without kissing me goodbye. I sat there until I heard her truck pull away, then went to the office, the small room off the kitchen where I kept the farm records, the filing cabinets, the safe. I unlocked the safe, pulled out the estate papers. The ones I'd signed 2 years ago with the lawyer, Jim Michaels. Standard stuff, transferring the farm to Linda in case something happened to me. She was my wife. It made sense. Or it had made sense then. Now I stared at my signature, at Linda's signature beside it, and felt something cold settle in my chest. I called Michael's office. Jim, it's Warren Hutchins. I need to know something about those estate papers. Sure, Warren. What's on your mind? If I wanted to change them, remove Linda as beneficiary, could I do that? Silence on the line. Then, well, technically, yes. But, Warren, those papers are designed to protect. Could I or couldn't I? You could. But there's a deadline. The transfer's set to finalize April 15th for tax purposes. After that, any changes would require her consent. Or a court order. April 15th, 2 months away. Warren, you still there? Yeah, thanks, Jim. I hung up. Sat there with the estate papers in my hands and Betty's words echoing in my head, with a man, and Linda's words from this morning. Maybe it's time to think about what comes next. Outside, the wind picked up. The barn door banged loose on its hinge. metal on metal, again and again. I knew exactly what came next. Roy Patterson showed up 3 days later without calling first. That was his way, just appeared when he sensed something wrong. We'd known each other 40 years, hunted together every season, and he'd never once led with small talk. He found me in the barn, changing oil on the farmall. The engine smelled like hot metal and old grease. I drained the pan into a bucket, black liquid thick as molasses in the February cold. Roy didn't say anything at first, just grabbed the splitting maul from the wall and walked outside to the woodpile. I heard the first crack, that solid thunk of steel hitting oak, and knew he'd stay out there until I came to him. I wiped my hands on a rag and followed. He worked in rhythm, swing, crack, split, stack. Swing, crack, split, stack. Wood chips scattered across the frozen ground. His breath came out in clouds. "You look like hell," he said, not stopping. "Thanks. Lost weight. You sleeping?" "Some." Crack. Another log split clean down the middle. Betty called me. So I leaned against the woodshed wall, felt the cold seep through my coat. "She tell you everything?" "Enough." He set up another log, swung. "Said you're sitting in that barn till midnight every night. Said Linda's gone more than she's home. She's busy." Busy. Roy planted the maul in the chopping block, turned to face me. His eyes were the pale blue of winter sky. "You gonna tell me what's eating you, or are we gonna dance around it?" So I told him, the diner gossip. The hotel receipt, the estate papers, and the April deadline, all of it spilled out there in the cold while he listened and didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You got proof?" "Receipt. Betty's niece saw her there." "That's hearsay and a piece of paper. You confront Linda?" "No." Why not?" "Because if I do, she'll know I know. And if she knows I know, she'll—" I stopped. Couldn't finish. "She'll what? Run? File first? Cash out before you can change those papers?" "Yeah." Roy picked up the maul again, but didn't swing, just held it. "You remember that trail cam we used for deer season? The one with the motion sensor?" "What about it?" "You still got it?" "In the equipment shed. Why?" He looked at me dead on. "Because sometimes the best way to find truth is to let 'em think you're not looking." And he drove the maul into the block one more time, left it there. "You said Linda goes to her sister's cabin. That right?" "That's what she says." "So set up the cam, point it at the cabin road, see who comes and goes." He brushed wood chips off his gloves. "You want to know the truth, or you want to keep guessing?" "That feels like what? Like you don't trust your wife?" Roy's voice went hard. "Warren, she's already lying to you. You're just catching up." The wind kicked up, rattling the bare branches overhead. Somewhere a crow called, harsh and lonely. "You know where the cabin is?" Roy asked. "Yeah, 40 miles west off County Road 14. Linda's sister Margie uses it for summer weekends." Margie know Linda's been staying there?" "I don't know. Maybe find out." Roy walked toward his truck, then stopped. "You're a good man, Hutch. Too good, maybe. But being good doesn't mean being blind." After he left, I stood in the cold until I couldn't feel my feet anymore. Then I went to the equipment shed and found the trail cam, a Bushnell, camouflage casing, motion activated. We'd mounted it on a tree last November to track deer movement. Caught some good footage before the season ended. I checked the batteries, still charged, memory card empty. That night, after Linda went to bed, I drove the 40 miles west. Took the back roads, no headlights until I was miles from home. The cabin sat off County Road 14, down a dirt lane barely wide enough for one truck. I'd been there twice before. Once for a family cookout, once to help Margie fix a busted pipe. I parked a quarter mile away and walked in. The frozen ground crunched under my boots, loud as gunshots in the quiet. No moon, just starlight and the glow of snow in the fields. The cabin was dark, no vehicles. No tracks in the snow except deer and rabbit. I found an oak tree with a clear view of the driveway, about 30 yards back from the cabin. Strapped the camera to the trunk, angled it down, set it to motion activated with thermal imaging. The LCD screen glowed green in the dark, battery full, memory card empty, ready. I tested it by walking past. The camera clicked, infrared flash invisible to the naked eye. Then I hiked back to my truck and drove home. Linda was still asleep when I got back. I undressed in the dark, slid into bed beside her. She didn't stir. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. The trail cam would run for 2 weeks on those batteries. 2 weeks to see if she was telling the truth about where she went. 2 weeks to find out if Roy was right, if I was blind or just too good. Outside, the wind howled against the house. And somewhere in the distance, ice cracked on the pond with a sound like a rifle shot. I lasted 11 days before I went back for the camera. 11 days of Linda saying she had church meetings or errands. A weekend helping Margie clean out the cabin. 11 days of watching her truck disappear down the drive. 11 days of eating dinner alone and pretending everything was fine. On the 12th day, I drove to the feed store. Needed grain for the cattle, 50-pound bags that would last through March. The store smelled like cracked corn and molasses, dust hanging in the air from the overhead fans. I was loading bags into the truck bed when Kyle Brennan's silver F-150 pulled up beside me. He got out wearing pressed jeans and a North Face jacket that probably cost more than my monthly feed bill. Sunglasses, even though it was overcast. He smiled like we were friends. "Warren, good to see you." I kept loading bags. "Kyle, listen, I wanted to follow up on our conversation about the property." He leaned against his truck, casual. "I know you said no, but markets change. I'm prepared to go higher than my last offer." "Not interested." "You haven't heard the number." "Don't need to." His smile tightened. "You're, what, 67, 68? That's a lot of land for one man." He took off his sunglasses, made a show of looking me over. "No offense, but you can't farm forever. Linda knows it. Smart woman." I set down the bag I was holding, slowly. "You talked to Linda about my farm?" "We've discussed opportunities. She's forward-thinking. Understands that land like yours, prime location, highway access, it's worth more developed than farmed." He put his sunglasses back on. "She gets it, even if you don't." Behind us, the feed store door opened. Earl Mitchell, the owner, stood watching. So did two other farmers loading trucks. Small towns, everybody sees everything. "That land's been Hutchins' land since 1889, I said. Kept my voice level, though my hands wanted to shake. "It'll be Hutchins' land when I'm dead. You want to develop something? Go buy someone else's legacy." Kyle's jaw worked. "You're holding on to the past, old man. That's your problem. Past doesn't pay bills. The past built everything you're standing on," I said. "Now get in your truck and drive away before I forget my manners." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. Short, bitter. "Linda said you were stubborn. She wasn't kidding." He opened his truck door. "When you change your mind, and you will, my offer won't be on the table anymore." He drove off, engine growling. Earl came over, helped me load the last 3 bags without speaking. When we finished, he said, "That boy's been buying up half the county. Heard he's got plans for a big subdivision, luxury farmettes, he calls them." "On whose land?" "Whoever's fool enough to sell." I drove home with Earl's words rattling around my head. Luxury farmettes. City people playing at country life on quarter-acre lots carved out of real farms. My grandfather would have spit. When I got home, Linda's truck was gone. Again, I didn't wait. Drove straight to the cabin. The trail cam was where I'd left it, strapped still tight around the oak trunk. I unclipped it, hands shaking now, from cold or nerves, I couldn't tell. Took it to the truck and plugged it into my laptop. The screen loaded slow. Then the thumbnails appeared. 47 images, 12 video clips. I clicked the first image, timestamp, February 18th, 9:47 p.m. Linda's truck pulled up close to the cabin, driver's door open, and beside it, Kyle Brennan's silver F-150. My stomach dropped. Next image, 11:34 p.m. Both vehicles still there, cabin windows glowing. Next, 2:47 a.m. 2 heat signatures visible through the thermal imaging. Bodies, close together, in the front room. I clicked through the rest. Different nights, same pattern. Her truck, his truck. Late arrival, late departure, sometimes they stayed until dawn. 12 nights total, spread across February and into early March. I sat there in the truck cab, laptop screen glowing in the gray afternoon light. My hands felt numb on the keyboard. There was a video file dated March 3rd. I clicked it. Thermal footage. 2 figures walking from the cabin to Kyle's truck. They stopped at the driver's door. Embraced. The kiss lasted 17 seconds. I know, because I counted. Then he got in and drove away. And she stood there watching until his taillights disappeared. I closed the laptop, sat there breathing. The truck smelled like diesel and cattle feed, and something sour I realized was my own sweat. My phone rang. Linda's name on the screen. I didn't answer. It rang again. Voicemail. Text message. "Where are you? Need to talk." I started the engine, drove home, pulled into the drive just as the mail truck was leaving. Inside the mailbox, bills, a seed catalog, and a certified letter. I opened it, standing right there at the road. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Filed by Linda Marie Hutchins, requesting equitable division of marital assets, including 450 acres of agricultural land currently held in joint estate trust. The paper shook in my hands. At the bottom, in smaller print, notice of asset division claim. All property acquired during marriage subject to 50-50, split per Iowa code. Petitioner requests immediate asset freeze pending resolution. My phone rang again. This time it was Roy. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded far away. "You get the pictures?" "I got 'em." "And?" I looked at the divorce papers, then at the house where Linda and I had lived for 7 years. where I'd carried her over the threshold like some kind of fool who thought second chances came with guarantees. 12 nights, I said. 12 nights at the cabin with Kyle Brennan. Thermal imaging caught it all, Roy swore softly. She know you know? She knows something. Just filed for divorce, wants half the farm. Silence on the line. Then, April 15th. That's 4 weeks away. I know. If she gets her claim in before you change those estate papers. I know, Roy. What are you gonna do? I looked at the barn, the farm all visible through the open door, at the fields stretching toward the horizon. At the house, my grandfather built with lumber he'd milled himself. Hutchins' land feeds Hutchins' blood. I'm gonna do what my grandfather taught me, I said. I'm gonna measure twice and cut once. Need help? Not yet, but Roy, I paused. Check your glove box. See if you've still got that second phone charger. What? Just check. I hung up before he could ask why, because I just remembered something. The day I found the hotel receipt, I'd also found a phone charger in Linda's glove box. Not her regular one, a different brand. And Linda only had one phone, or at least that's what I'd thought. I called Jim Michaels first thing the next morning. He answered on the second ring, sounded like he was eating breakfast. Warren, didn't expect to hear from you so soon. I need to see you, today if possible. Well, I've got a full schedule, but is everything all right? No. Silence. Then, come by at 3. I'll clear the time. I spent the morning gathering documents, the estate papers, bank statements going back 6 months, the hotel receipt, carefully photographed so I could put the original back, screenshots from the trail cam. I'd loaded the whole memory card onto my laptop, burned it to 3 separate disks, one for Jim, one for Roy, one for the safe. At 2:30, I drove to town. Jim Michaels' office sat above the pharmacy on Main Street. Old building, stairs that creaked, heating that never worked right. His secretary wasn't at her desk. He met me at the door himself. Warren. He shook my hand, looked at my face. You look terrible. Feel worse. And his office smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Certificates on the wall, diplomas, a photo of his grandkids. He'd been my lawyer for 20 years. Helped with me through the estate planning after my first wife Sarah died. Good man, honest. I put the folder on his desk. He opened it, looked at the trail cam photos, the timestamps, the thermal images. His face went very still. How long? He asked. At least 12 nights that I can prove. Probably longer. He flipped through the bank statements. These cash withdrawals, $3,200 since January. Small amounts, nothing that would flag, but it adds up. Jim sat back in his chair. It squeaked. And the divorce papers? Served yesterday. She wants half the farm. Christ, Warren. He rubbed his face. All right, let me think. He pulled out a legal pad, started writing. You signed those estate papers 2 years ago. Standard spousal transfer in case of death. Clean and simple. Back then. Can I change them? Yes, but there are complications. He tapped his pen against the pad. The April 15th deadline is real. After that, any changes require either Linda's consent, which she won't give, or proof of fraud, coercion, or undue influence. What about adultery? Iowa's a no-fault divorce state. Adultery doesn't affect asset division unless you can prove she manipulated you into signing those papers under false pretenses. He looked at the photos again. These prove the affair. They don't prove she planned it beforehand. My chest felt tight. So she gets half. Not necessarily. Jim leaned forward. Here's what we need. Evidence that she intended to defraud you when you signed those papers. Emails, texts, anything showing premeditation. If we can prove she married you or stayed married to you with the intent of stealing this land, then we can argue fraud. That voids the estate transfer. How do I get that? Phone records. Her cell phone. If she's been planning this with Brennan, and I'd bet money she has, there's a trail. And he closed the folder. But Warren, you've got 4 weeks. That's not a lot of time. What about Clara? Your daughter? He frowned. What about her? She's from my first marriage. Doesn't she have rights? Jim's pen stopped. He stared at me. Say that again. Clara. She's Sarah's daughter. If this land was mine before Linda. Hold on. Jim pulled out another file, flipped through papers. When did Sarah die? 2016. And when did you marry Linda? 2018. And you owned this farm outright before Sarah died? Since my father died in 98. Jim's face changed. Warren, why didn't I know you had a daughter from a previous marriage? You never asked. The estate planning was about Linda. Jesus. He was writing fast now. Iowa law, section 633. 238 protects children from prior marriages if estate transfers occur after remarriage. Clara has descendant rights. If she files a counterclaim arguing undue influence, she can contest the transfer entirely. Even though I signed papers giving everything to Linda? Especially because you signed them. The law assumes you were pressured or manipulated into disinheriting your biological child. It's a protection against exactly this kind of situation, new spouse pressuring you to cut out kids from the first marriage. He looked up. Clara still talk to you? No, we had a falling out 3 years ago. I missed her wedding. It was harvest season, I couldn't leave the farm. Call her. Jim, call her today, explain what's happening. If she files a counterclaim before April 15th, Linda's petition becomes a three-way fight, and in a three-way fight, the biological child has stronger rights than the second spouse, especially if we can prove fraud. I sat there trying to process it all. So Clara could inherit the whole farm if we play this right? Or at worst, you and Clara split it, and Linda gets a cash settlement based on non-land assets? He started pulling forms from his filing cabinet. But she has to file, soon, and you need phone records. How do I get those? She's on your cell plan? Yeah. Then request records from the carrier. You're the account holder. They have to give them to you. He handed me a form. Fill this out, fax it today. Results take a week, sometimes two. I took the form. My hand was shaking again. Warren, Jim's voice was gentle. I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. She planned this. These photos prove it. We just need to connect the dots. I drove home as the sun was setting, sky going orange and purple over the fields. The temperature was dropping, supposed to freeze again tonight, though it was mid-March now. The ground was starting to thaw in the daytime, turning the roads to mud. But by morning, everything would be ice again. Spring was trying to come. Couldn't quite make it yet. At home, I sat in the truck for a long time before going inside. Then I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in 3 years. Clara answered on the fourth ring. Dad? Her voice broke something open in my chest. Clara, I need your help. It's about Grandpa's farm. Silence. Then, I'm listening. Clara flew in 2 days later. I picked her up at the Des Moines airport, 90 miles each way, but worth it to see her walking through the terminal doors. She looked like her mother. Same dark hair, same set to her jaw when she was determined. 42 now, architect in Denver, doing well for herself. We hugged in the baggage claim. She held on longer than I expected. Thanks for coming, I said. You said it was about the farm. She pulled back, looked at my face. You look tired, Dad. I am. We didn't talk much on the drive home. She stared out the window at the flat fields, the farmhouses set back from the road, the sky so big it swallowed everything. I'd forgotten she hadn't been back in 3 years. Forgotten how strange this landscape must look after Denver's mountains. When we pulled into the drive, she said, Linda here. No, she's somewhere else. Good. On inside, I made coffee while she walked through the house. Heard her footsteps overhead, moving through the bedrooms. When she came back down, her face was tight. She redecorated Mom's sewing room. I know. Put up wallpaper, ugly wallpaper. I know. Clara sat at the kitchen table. Same table her mother had served Sunday dinners at for 30 years. Tell me everything. So I did. The diner gossip, the hotel receipt, the trail cam, the divorce papers, Kyle Brennan's offer, all of it. She listened without interrupting, her coffee going cold in front of her. When I finished, she said, that bitch. Clara. No, that's what she is. She married you for this land, didn't she? Waited until the estate papers were signed, then started her affair. Clara's voice was shaking. How long has she been sleeping with him? 12 nights, I can prove. Probably more. And now she wants half. Jim Michaels says you can file a counterclaim, descendant rights, because you're from my first marriage, and the land was mine before Linda. Clara leaned back, stared at the ceiling. Mom would kill her. Your mom would have seen through her before I ever proposed. Yeah. She looked at me. Why didn't you, Dad? Because I was lonely, I said. Because after your mom died, this house was too quiet. Because Linda seemed kind and I was too old to think someone would marry me for money. I wrapped my hands around my mug. Because I was a fool. You're not a fool. You're just She stopped. You loved her. I thought I did. Now I don't know what I thought. We sat in silence. Outside, the wind picked up. March wind, still cold but starting to smell like thaw. Mud season coming. Finally, Clara said, I'll do it. I'll file the counterclaim. You sure? That farm was Grandpa's, and great-grandpa's before him. It was Mom's, too, even if she never owned it on paper. She worked this land same as you. Clara's jaw set. Linda doesn't get to waltz in and steal it. I don't care what paper she's got. I felt something loosen in my chest. Jim says we need phone records. Proof that she planned this. I can help with that. Clara pulled out her laptop. What carrier do you use? Verizon. Account holder? Me. Then we can pull records. Call logs, text logs, everything. She opened the laptop, started typing. If she's been coordinating with this Kyle guy, it'll show. The next morning, Clara went to Jim Michael's office and filed the counterclaim. I stayed home because Linda was due back. She'd texted that she needed to pick up some things. I wanted to be there when she arrived. She pulled in at 10, parked, walked to the house like nothing was wrong, came through the door with her purse over her shoulder, and stopped when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table. Warren. Linda. I didn't think you'd be here. It's my house. She set her purse down. About the papers. Don't. I just want you to know it's not personal. It's just, we want different things. You want to keep farming until you die. You want half my land so you can sell it to Kyle Brennan, I said, kept my voice level. For his luxury farmette subdivision. That about right? Her face went pale. I know about the cabin, Linda. I know about the 12 nights in February and March. I know about the Benton Inn. I know all of it. She grabbed the counter. You've been spying on me? I've been finding out the truth. You can't do this. You can't. The front door opened. Clara walked in, Jim Michaels behind her. Linda's mouth opened, closed. Clara, what are you doing here? Filing a counterclaim, Clara said. Descendant rights. Turns out, when Dad married you, he should have protected my inheritance. Didn't. But Iowa law protects me anyway. She smiled, cold as January. Surprise. She can't. Linda looked at Jim. Is this legal? Completely, Jim said. He set his briefcase on the table, pulled out papers. Mrs. Hutchins, you've been served. Clara Hutchins is contesting the estate transfer on grounds of undue influence and fraud, which means your claim to the property is now disputed. He handed her the papers. You'll need your own lawyer. Linda's hands shook as she took them. This is insane. Warren, tell them. I've got nothing to tell them, I said. Except maybe this. Roy Patterson's son is a state trooper. He ran some checks. Turns out Kyle Brennan's subdivision permits? Fake. Environmental assessments? Forged. Zoning board approval? Doesn't exist. I stood up. The Tribune's running the story Friday. Should make interesting reading. Her face crumpled. Warren, please. Phone records came back yesterday, Clara said. She pulled out her own papers. 8 months of calls and texts between you and Kyle Brennan, planning this, coordinating, talking about how much the land's worth, how to convince Dad to sell, she read from the printout. Push him into signing over everything, then file for divorce and split the proceeds. Clara looked up. That was from January 10th, 2 weeks before your first night at the cabin. Linda backed toward the door. I need to go. Yeah, I said. You do. She grabbed her purse and ran. We heard her truck start, gravel spraying as she tore out of the drive. Clara put the phone records back in the folder. Her hands were steady, but I could see tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, I said. Sorry you had to come back for this. Sorry I... Don't. She hugged me. You didn't do anything wrong, Dad. She did. Jim cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Warren, with these phone records and the trail cam evidence, Linda's claim won't hold up. You'll likely keep the farm. Clara gets her rightful inheritance secured, and Linda walks away with whatever cash settlement the judge decides. Which won't be much, given the fraud. Well, what about Kyle? Clara asked. His business is done, Jim said. Once that Tribune story runs, no bank will touch him. No zoning board will approve him. He's finished in this county. He packed up his briefcase. Justice isn't always fast, but sometimes it's thorough. After he left, Clara and I sat on the porch. It was warm enough now, just barely, to sit outside without coats. The field stretched brown and muddy toward the horizon, but you could smell it coming. That green smell. Spring. I'm sorry I missed your wedding, I said. I know. I was mad then. I'm not now. I should have been there. Yeah, you should have. She leaned her head on my shoulder. But you're here now. That's what matters. A cardinal landed on the fence post, bright red against the gray wood. Sarah's favorite bird. I'd scattered her ashes under the oak tree by the pond, and every spring the cardinals came back. She'd be proud of you, Clara said, following my gaze. Your mom? Yeah, for fighting back. For not letting Linda steal what Grandpa built. She squeezed my hand. For calling me. We sat there until the sun went down, watching the fields turn gold in the last light. The Tribune story ran on Friday morning. Front page below the fold. Local developer accused of permit fraud. By noon, half the county had called. By evening, Linda's lawyer had contacted Jim about settlement talks. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle. Clara was in her old bedroom down the hall. She'd extended her stay, set her firm, could handle things remotely for a while. The furnace kicked on. The wind rattled the storm windows. Normal sounds? Familiar. But something felt wrong. At 2 a.m., well, I gave up, got dressed, drove to the cemetery. Sarah's grave sat under the oak tree on the hill, overlooking the South 40. Simple stone. Her name, her dates, and the line I'd chosen. Beloved wife and mother, the land remembers. I sat on the cold ground beside it. The March wind cut through my jacket, carrying the smell of wet earth and last year's leaves. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, I said. No answer. Just wind. She lied to me. Cheated. Tried to steal everything you and I built. I touched the stone. But winning this way, dragging it through lawyers, using Clara as a weapon, watching Linda's life fall apart, Melissa and I stopped. Is that what you would have wanted? A cardinal called from somewhere in the darkness. 3 notes, clear and sharp. I thought about Sarah, how she'd handled things. She'd been tougher than me in some ways, softer in others. When the bank had tried to foreclose during the drought of '88, she'd gone down there with 40 years of receipts and a ledger and proven we'd paid every cent we owed. Polite but immovable. That was Sarah. Would you think less of me? I asked the stone. For this? The wind blew harder, and then impossibly a cardinal landed on the headstone, red as blood against the gray granite. It cocked its head, looked at me with one black eye. Sarah used to say cardinals were messages, signs from people who'd passed on. I'd never believed it, but sitting there at 2 a.m, watching that bird watch me, I felt something shift. All right, I said. I'll finish it. The cardinal took off, disappeared into the dark. I drove home as the sky started to gray in the east. Found Clara in the kitchen making coffee, still in her pajamas. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Went for a drive. She poured 2 mugs, handed me one. We stood at the window watching dawn break over the fields. The ground was softer now, mud instead of frost. You could smell it through the window, that rich, dark smell of earth waking up. Linda's lawyer called Jim yesterday, Clara said. They want to settle. I know. And she's offering to drop all claims to the farm, take a cash buyout based on non-land assets. $60,000. I sipped my coffee. That's fair. More than fair. Jim says we should take it. Get her out clean. Move on. Clara turned to look at me. What do you want to do? I want this to be over. Then we settle? I nodded. Clara exhaled. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. She set down her mug. I've been thinking, after this is done, after Linda's gone and the papers are settled, I might look for a place nearby. Nothing big, just somewhere I can come on weekends, maybe work remote a few days a month. But you do that? This is home, Dad. I forgot that for a while. Got mad about the wedding, about you choosing the farm over me. But, she gestured at the window, the fields, the barn. This is where I'm from, where Mom's buried, where Grandpa homesteaded. I want to be part of it again. Your mom would like that. Yeah, she would. That afternoon, Roy came by, found us in the barn. I was changing spark plugs on the farm all. Clara was reorganizing the tool bench. He watched for a minute, then said, Heard Linda's settling. Word travels fast. It's a small county. He leaned against the workbench. How you feeling about it? Relieved, tired, ready for it to be done. Fair enough. He pulled something from his pocket, an apple, bit into it, the sound sharp in the quiet barn. You gonna keep farming? That's the plan? I'm at 67 years old, farming 450 acres alone. That's a hell of a plan. Clara spoke up from the tool bench. He won't be alone. I'm coming back weekends, maybe more. Roy looked at her, then at me, smiled. Well then, that changes things. Jim says the settlement should be final by mid-April, I said. Once that's done, I want to do something. What's that? Take Linda's parents the evidence, the photos, the phone records, all of it. They deserve to know the truth. Roy stopped chewing. You sure about that? They're old-school Catholics. This'll destroy them. They raised her. They should know what she became. I tightened the last spark plug, wiped my hands on a rag. I'm not doing it to be cruel. I'm doing it so they hear it from me, not from town gossip. How you planning to get there? It's 40 miles. I'll drive. In what, your truck? I looked at the farm all. At the welded plate on the dashboard, the words my grandfather had hammered in 70 years ago. Hutchins' land feeds Hutchins' blood. No sale, no surrender. No, I said, not the truck. Roy followed my gaze, started laughing. You're not serious. My grandfather drove this tractor from Missouri to Iowa in 1952. It took him 4 days at 15 miles an hour. I can make 40 miles. Warren, that's crazy. Oh, maybe. I ran my hand over the tractor's hood. but it's the right kind of crazy. Clara came over, looked at the tractor, looked at me. When? After the settlement's final. After Linda's gone. I'll take the papers, the evidence, and this tractor, and I'll drive to their house. Park it in their driveway, hand them the truth. I met her eyes. Then I'll come home and plant corn. She smiled. I'll drive the seed planter. Roy shook his head, still grinning. You Hutchins are all insane. Every generation. Runs in the family, Clara said. That night, I baked an apple pie. I hadn't baked since Sarah died. That had been her thing, not mine. But I found her recipe card in the kitchen drawer, written in her careful handwriting. Followed it exactly. Granny Smith, apples, cinnamon, butter, the crust rolled thin, the smell filled the house. Cinnamon and butter and caramelized sugar. When it came out of the oven, golden and perfect, Clara said, "Who's that for?" Linda's parents. I'll bring it when I go. A pie? It's what Linda used to bake. Every week, she said it was for church fundraisers. Turned out she was baking for Kyle. I set the pie on the cooling rack. Her mother should know, and she should know I'm not her daughter. Clara looked at the pie for a long time. Then she hugged me. Mom would be proud, she whispered. Outside, the March wind was gentler now. April coming, planting season just around the corner. Spring always came eventually. You just had to be patient. The settlement finalized on April 12th. Linda signed the papers at her lawyer's office. I signed at Jim's. We didn't see each other. Didn't need to. She got $60,000. I kept the farm. Clara's inheritance was secured in writing. Half ownership upon my death. Co-management rights starting immediately. Linda moved out that weekend. Took her clothes, her books, the ugly wallpaper from Sarah's sewing room. Left the kitchen table, the bedroom furniture, everything that had been there before she arrived. By Sunday evening, it was like she'd never existed. Monday morning, April 15th, I fueled up the farm all. Roy and Clara stood watching as I checked the oil, the coolant, the tire pressure. The tractor idled rough. It always had, but the engine was sound. 73 years old and still running. You really doing this? Roy asked. I really am. It's 40 miles. 15 miles an hour. 3 hours, give or take. I climbed into the cab. The seat leather was cracked, the steering wheel worn smooth by 3 generations of Hutchins' hands. I'll be back by dark. Clara handed me a thermos of coffee in the manila envelope. Inside, trail cam photos, phone records, bank statements, the settlement papers, and on top, a handwritten letter I'd finished at dawn. You sure about the pie? She asked. I looked at the passenger seat. Sarah's apple pie sat in a carrier, still warm from reheating. I'm sure. We'll call when you get there. I will. I put the tractor in gear. The engine roared, black smoke coughing from the stack. Then I was rolling down the driveway, gravel crunching under the big rear tires. Behind me, Roy and Clara stood watching. Clara raised one hand. I raised mine back. Then I turned onto the county road and didn't look back. The first mile was the hardest. The tractor topped out at 15 miles per hour, and even that felt fast. Cars passed me, some honked friendly, some annoyed. One guy in a pickup gave me a thumbs up. Another filmed me on his phone. Let them film, let them wonder. By the second mile, I'd settled into it. The rhythm of the engine, the smell of diesel, the way the steering wheel pulled slightly left. My grandfather had driven this same tractor across 3 states. I could manage 40 miles. The sun climbed higher. The day warmed. Spring in Iowa, mud season, but you could smell the green coming. Fields waiting to be planted, trees starting to bud. I passed through Miller's Junction around mile 8. Saw Betty in the diner window. She came out, stood on the sidewalk watching me go by. I waved. She waved back. By mile 15, my back was aching. By mile 20, my hands were numb from the vibration. But I kept going. The coffee helped. And every time I thought about stopping, I looked at the welded plate on the dashboard. No sale. No surrender. 3 hours and 17 minutes after I left home, I turned onto Linda's parents' road. They lived in a small farmhouse 40 miles southwest. 80 acres, mostly retired now. Margaret and Frank Kowalski, both in their 70s. Good Catholics, good people. They'd welcomed me into their family when I married Linda, treated me like a son. They deserved better than a daughter who'd lied to everyone. I pulled into their driveway and shut off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. My ears rang. My hands shook. The front door opened. Frank came out first, Margaret behind him. They stood on the porch, staring at the tractor, at me climbing down from the cab. "Warren?" Frank called. "What in God's name?" "I need to talk to you both," I said. "It's about Linda." Margaret's hand went to her mouth. I grabbed the envelope in the pie carrier, walked to the porch. Up close, they looked older than I remembered. Frank's face was lined deep, Margaret's hair gone, mostly gray. "Can I come in?" I asked. They led me to the kitchen. The house smelled like coffee and old wood. Crucifixes on the walls, family photos on the mantel, Linda's school pictures, her wedding photo, The one from our wedding, 7 years ago. I set the pie on the table. Then the envelope. What's this about? Frank asked. His voice was hard. Linda and I are divorced. Settlement finalized Friday. I pushed the envelope toward them. These are the reasons why. Margaret opened it with shaking hands, pulled out the first photo, thermal image from the trail cam. 2 heat signatures. She looked at it for a long time. When was this taken? She whispered. February 23rd, 2:47 a.m. at your daughter's cabin. I pulled out more photos. There are 12 nights like this, all documented. The man is Kyle Brennan. He's a developer. He wanted to buy my farm. Linda was helping him. Frank looked through the phone records. His jaw worked. These texts, 8 months of planning, I said. How to convince me to sell. How to manipulate the estate papers. How to divorce me and split the money. I pulled out the settlement papers. She got $60,000. She wanted $2 million and half my land. Margaret was crying now, silent tears running down her face. I didn't come here to hurt you, I said, kept my voice gentle. But I thought you should hear the truth from me, not from town gossip, not from Linda's version. Does she know you're here? Frank asked. No. Good. He stood up, paced to the window, stared out at the tractor in the driveway. That's your grandfather's farm all. Yes, sir. So you drove it here? 3 hours and 17 minutes. 15 miles an hour. He turned around. His eyes were wet. Why? Because this land, my land, it's been Hutchins' land since 1889. My grandfather drove this tractor from Missouri to claim it. My father farmed it through the Depression. My first wife helped me keep it through droughts and bad years. I met his eyes. Your daughter tried to steal it. I thought you should know. Margaret picked up the pie. What's this? Apple. My late wife's recipe. I paused. Linda used to bake pies every Friday. Said they were for church fundraisers. They weren't. She was baking them for Kyle. Margaret set the pie down like it burned her. Walked to the counter, came back with a rolling pin. Old wood, worn smooth. She held it out to me. I don't understand, I said. Take it. Her voice shook. You give this to Linda next time you see her. You tell her... She couldn't finish. Thrust the rolling pin at me again. You tell her she's no daughter of mine until she makes this right. Frank put his hand on her shoulder. Margaret, no. She was crying harder now. We raised her better than this. We taught her right from wrong. We taught her... Her voice broke. She begged for another man, while wearing your ring, while living in your house. She's not living there anymore, I said quietly. Good, Margaret whispered. Good. We sat in silence. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the road. Finally, Frank said, I'm sorry, Warren, for what she did, for all of it. You didn't do anything wrong. We raised her. You raised her right. She chose wrong. I stood up. I should go. Got 40 miles back, and it'll be dark soon. Frank walked me to the door. On the porch, he shook my hand. That tractor, your grandfather's tractor. Yes, sir. You keep farming that land, Warren. You hear me? Don't let what she did. Don't let it break you. I won't. Margaret came to the door, pressed something into my hand. A rosary. For the drive home. For protection. I'm not Catholic. Tonight, you are. She squeezed my hand. Go with God, Warren, and thank you for telling us the truth. I climbed back into the farmall. The seat felt familiar now, the steering wheel like an old friend. I started the engine. It caught on the first try and pulled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing together on the porch, Frank's arm around Margaret, both of them crying. I drove home as the sun set, the sky going orange and pink over the fields, 40 miles at 15 miles an hour, the engine roaring, the tractor swaying on the county roads. And in my pocket, Margaret's rosary clicked gently with every bump. 3 hours and 40 minutes later, longer going back, tired now, I pulled into my own driveway. Clara and Roy were waiting. They'd set up floodlights in the barnyard. Clara ran to the tractor before I'd even shut it off. You okay? She called over the engine noise. I killed the engine. In the sudden quiet, I could hear spring peepers from the pond, night birds, the wind in the new leaves. I'm okay, I said. How'd they take it? I climbed down, my legs stiff, my back screaming, showed her the rolling pin. Margaret sent this, said to give it to Linda, said she's no daughter of hers until she makes it right. Clara took the rolling pin, turned it over in her hands, started laughing, then crying, then both at once. Roy gripped my shoulder. You did good, Hutch. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. He looked at the tractor. Hell of a drive. Hell of a tractor. We stood there as the floodlights, the three of us, while the spring night settled around us. Somewhere in the fields, the soil was warming, waiting. Tomorrow, we'd plant corn. The Tribune ran a follow-up story the next week. Kyle Brennan's business partner had turned state's evidence, testified that Kyle had forged environmental permits, bribed a county clerk, falsified zoning approvals. The whole subdivision scheme collapsed. Kyle faced fraud charges. His real estate license got suspended. By the time the story broke, he'd already left town. Someone said they saw him in Omaha, working construction. Someone else said Colorado. Nobody knew for sure. Nobody much cared. Linda left too. Forwarded no address. Her phone number disconnected. I heard third hand that she'd taken a bus to Columbus, stayed with a cousin. That was the last anyone knew. The church ladies stopped asking about her after a while. Betty at the diner stopped setting 2 mugs when I came in. The mailbox had only my name on it now. It was like she'd been erased. Margaret called once, 2 weeks after I'd visited, asked how I was doing, said she and Frank were praying for me, said they'd lit a candle at Mass for Sarah, my first wife, not their daughter. I thanked her. Told her I was managing, told her Clara was staying through planting season. Good, Margaret said. You shouldn't be alone. I'm not alone, I said. I've got 450 acres and 3 generations of ghosts keeping me company. She laughed at that. Sad, but real. April turned into May. The ground dried enough to work. Clara and I spent 3 days preparing the fields, dissing, harrowing, checking the soil temperature. Roy came by most evenings, helped with equipment checks, stayed for dinner. The first day of planting, we started at dawn. I drove the farmall, old tractor, old method, slower than the modern equipment but steadier. Clara followed on the seed planter, a newer John Deere I'd bought used 5 years back. The planter chattered as it worked, dropping seeds in precise rows, covering them with soil. The fields smelled like earth and diesel and possibility. The sun climbed higher, warming my shoulders through my shirt. By noon, we'd planted 40 acres. We stopped for lunch, sandwiches Clara had packed, thermoses of coffee, sat on the tailgate of my truck, looking at the fresh-turned soil. Mom would love this, Clara said. She always did love planting season, said it was like starting over, new chance every year. Well, that's what this is, isn't it? Clara gestured at the fields. Starting over. I guess so. Dad. She set down her sandwich. I've been thinking about moving back, not just weekends, actually moving back. I looked at her. What about your firm in Denver? They'll survive. And there's architecture work here. Farm buildings, grain elevators, rural development done right. Not subdivisions. Real work. She picked at the crust of her bread. Plus, you're not getting any younger. This farm needs someone who'll keep it going after you're gone. It's a hard life. So's living somewhere you don't belong. She smiled. I belong here. Took me a while to figure that out, but I do. Your mom would be happy. Yeah, she would. We finished lunch and went back to work. By sunset, we'd planted 120 acres. The seedlings would sprout in 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, green rows emerging from dark soil. The cycle continuing. That night, I stood on the porch with my evening coffee. The rain gauge showed half an inch from the afternoon shower. Good for the seeds. The sky was clear now, stars coming out in the east. I heard Clara inside, talking on the phone with her firm, explaining she'd be relocating, working remotely. They weren't happy, but they understood. Roy pulled up the drive, climbed out with a 6-pack of beer. Thought you might want company. Always. We sat on the porch steps, drank in silence for a while. The spring peepers were loud tonight, thousands of them down by the pond. A whippoorwill called from the woods. You doing okay? Roy asked. Better than I expected. Good. He finished his beer, cracked another. Clara, moving back? Looks like it. Your dad would have liked that, keeping it in the family. My granddad, too. I looked out at the fields, barely visible in the dusk. You know what the funny thing is? What's that? I thought losing Linda would destroy me. Thought I couldn't survive another wife leaving, one way or another. I set down my beer. Turns out what I couldn't survive was losing this land. The people come and go, the land stays. That's the truth of it, Roy said. Land's more honest than people. You treat it right, it treats you right. Simple as that. Linda never understood that. Linda never understood a lot of things. He stood up, stretched. I should get going. Long day tomorrow. Thanks for coming by. That's what friends do. He paused at his truck. You ever hear from her, Linda? No, don't expect to. Good. Clean breaks heal faster. After he left, I went inside. Found Clara at the kitchen table with her laptop, sketching something. What's that? I asked. New barn design. The old one's solid, but we could use a machine shed. Something with proper ventilation, space for the newer equipment. She turned the screen toward me. What do you think? I looked at the drawing. Clean lines, practical layout, Timber frame construction that would last 100 years. I think your mom would have loved it, I said. High praise. She saved the file. I'm going to call a contractor tomorrow. Get some quotes. Clara, that's a big project. I know, but I'm staying, Dad. For real. And if I'm staying, we're doing this right. Not just maintaining. Actually building, she closed the laptop. Great-grandpa homesteaded this place with nothing but a mule and determination. We can manage a machine shed. I laughed. Couldn't help it. What's funny? Nothing. Just, you sound like your mother. Good. Someone needs to? That night, I slept better than I had in months. Dreamless, deep, the kind of sleep that comes after hard work and good decisions. When I woke, the dawn was breaking pink over the eastern fields. I made coffee, walked out to the porch. The thermometer read 58 degrees, warm for early May. The daffodils I'd planted on Sarah's grave would be blooming now, yellow and bright against the gray stone. I'd go visit later, tell her about Clara moving back, about the machine shed, about the corn we'd planted, tell her I was okay. The screen door creaked open. Clara came out with her own mug, stood beside me. We watched the sun climb higher, turning the fields from shadow to gold. It's beautiful, she said. It is. Worth fighting for. Always was. A cardinal flew past, quick flash of red against the morning sky, and landed on the fence post by the garden. It called 3 times, clear and sharp, then flew off toward the pond. Clara saw it too. Mom? Maybe. She's happy we're doing this. I can feel it. Me too. We stood there until our coffee went cold, watching the fields wake up. In 2 weeks, the first green shoots would break through. In 3 months, the corn would be waist high. In 6 months, we'd harvest. In the year after that, we'd plant again. The land remembers who loved it, who fought for it, who stayed. My grandfather had driven a tractor across 3 states to claim this soil. My father had farmed it through depression and drought. Sarah had helped me keep it through the hard years. Now Clara was here to carry it forward. 4 generations of Hutchins. 4 generations of blood and sweat and stubborn refusal to quit. Linda had wanted to sell it. Kyle had wanted to pave it. They'd both thought silence was surrender. Turned out silence was just preparation. I finished my coffee, set the mug on the porch rail. Ready to plant the North 40? Let me grab my boots. She went inside. I walked to the barn, fired up the farmall. The engine caught on the first try, roaring to life, black smoke coughing from the stack. I climbed into the cab, touched the welded plate one more time. Hutchins land feeds Hutchins blood. No sale, no surrender. My grandfather had been right about that, right about everything. 3 weeks later, I sat on the porch at dawn with my coffee. The rain gauge showed 2 inches from last night's storm. Good for the seedlings. I could see them now, green rows breaking through the dark soil, stretching toward the horizon. 120 acres of corn, coming up strong. I opened Sarah's field notebook, the one she'd kept for 30 years, recording planting dates, rainfall, harvest yields. Her handwriting filled the pages, careful and precise. I added my own entry, May 28, 2025. 2 inches overnight. First growth, visible in Northeast 40, continuing. The daffodils on her grave were in full bloom now, I knew. Yellow and bright against the gray stone. I'd been there yesterday, told her about Clara, about the machine shed plans, about how we'd kept the land. She hadn't answered, but the cardinal had shown up. Landed on her headstone, called 3 times, then flew away. That was answer enough. Clara's voice drifted from the barn, on the phone with a contractor, discussing timber specs and foundation depth. She'd set up a temporary office in the tack room, said the quiet helped her think, said maybe architecture and farming weren't so different, both about building something that lasts, both about understanding what the land beneath could hold. The sun cleared the tree line, warming the porch boards. The fields stretched green toward morning. My grandfather's transit sat on the table beside me, brass catching the light. Clara wanted to learn to use it properly. Said she might teach her kids someday, if she had any. Pass it down. Keep the precision. Some battles you win with noise. This one I'd won with receipts, a camera, and patience. But the real victory wasn't in the winning. It was in the staying, in the planting, in the morning coffee, in the rain gauge, in the field notebook that would outlast us all. Linda got her money and disappeared. Kyle got exposed and left town. The land got what it always gets. People who love it enough to fight for it. People ask me sometimes if I regret marrying her. I tell them no. Regrets for things you don't learn from. I learned that loyalty isn't automatic, that trust has to be earned, that some people see land as dirt and dollars while others see it as blood and legacy. I learned which kind I am. The land remembers who loved it and who tried to sell it. My mother used to say that, back before I corrected her that it was my grandfather's saying, not hers. Turned out they both were right. The land remembers. And now, so would I. Clara came out with fresh coffee, handed me a mug. Ready to check the south fields. Let me get my boots. We walked toward the barn together, past the farmall with its welded plate gleaming in the morning sun, past the fresh-turned earth, past the green shoots pushing toward the light. Spring had come, and with it, the future.